Hello, dear dreamers, and welcome to the Goodnight Lecture Hall. Here, ancient legends are gently brought back to life. So, find a comfortable spot, settle in, and let the gentle hum of our vintage projector wash over you. Relax, open your mind, and let's listen to what the myths have to tell us tonight. Imagine Italy at the turn of the centuries. Night falls upon the hills, and the cities glow like islands. Lamps burn in workshops, smelling of oil, wine, and warm resin. In the narrow gaps between streets, a soft echo of footsteps can be heard. The air is thick, like fresh paint. This era would later be called the Renaissance. People back then didn't yet name the time like that, but they already felt the world changing. They saw how old walls embraced new thought, how craft yearned for knowledge, and knowledge sought hands. Italy then was a network of city-states. Each had its own character and pride. Florence loved debate and accounting. Milan loved order and strength. Venice listened to the sea and counted the waves. Siena cherished the color of its brick and the honor of its banners. The cities were wealthy and dangerous. Schools and conspiracies existed side by side. Guards stood at the gates, while libraries stood open in the houses. In the evenings, people in the squares argued about law and the price of cloth, about music and taxes. The city was like an organism where every alley was a vein through which life flowed. Luxury here was not hidden. At festivals, fabrics blazed like twilight gardens. Processions with music, masks, and golden embroidery moved through the streets. But behind the glitter always followed the shadow of calculation. He who paid chose the theme of the painting, the theme of the festival, the step of the parade. Towers stood over the squares like raised fingers. They remembered the ancient feuds of clans and the new alliances. The bells knew when to call to the market and when to call to the council. The townspeople lived to the rhythm of these sounds, as to the rhythm of a heart. To understand this rhythm, it was enough to walk the morning streets. The baker opened his oven, and the first bread smelled as if the year had just begun in the city. The night's coolness still clung to the cobblestones, but the shop windows already reflected the high sky. By noon, the square buzzed like a fairground hive, and by evening, the streets became intimate again, and every footstep sounded slightly louder than during the day. In such a moment, it was clear that here, they valued not only the result, but the very path to it. How the canvas is stretched, how the primer is laid, how the brush chooses its necessary trajectory. Florence is the heart of change, and this heart beats without pause. The city counts its money, but knows how to spend it on what will remain in memory, on stone, music, paintings, books. In its narrow workshops, they argue over the price of lapis lazuli, the quality of oil, and how much light should fall on the wall of a refectory for the image to breathe. Here, argument is not a fight, but a tool like a whetstone. It sharpens the thought and makes it safe for the work at hand. In craftsmanship, much is decided by the hands. The workshop is warm and cramped, and in it, one quickly understands why the apprentice is first entrusted with water and pigments. He learns patience, not the grand word, but the small daily discipline. To grind the powder without lumps, to stretch the canvas without ripples, to let the primer sit a little longer so it sets just right. This is not the poetry of labor, it is its mechanics, and it is this that creates reliability. Knowledge lives right next to deed. literally on the next shelf. In the merchant's house lie an astrolabe, a treatise on accounting, and a small collection of ancient stories. In the evening, the master leaves through them, one after another, and he feels no sense that these books are from different worlds. Herein lies their strength. They explain the world to a man who, tomorrow, will negotiate on the bridge, buy fabric from a traveler, and argue about taxes with his neighbor down the street. In the Piazza della Signoria, where the stone is warm even in winter, politics does not detach itself from daily life. You can see children playing near the guards, while further on, temporary scaffolding has been erected. They will be reinforcing an arch. The townspeople cross the square, not for a spectacle, but on errands, yet their gaze catches on the statues and coats of arms. This is not a decoration, but a reminder. The city rests on the shoulders of those who knew how to combine honor and calculation. Sometimes it seems that life here is made of small agreements. Someone yields their place to you in line at the dyers, and you later help them carry stone tiles to a new house. Someone agrees to move a festival by a day so as not to interfere with the cloth fair. Such things are rarely written down on paper, but they are precisely what keep the city from making sudden, rash movements. The marketplace is a university that never has a vacation. People come here not only to buy, they come to listen to the world, to learn where the salt came from, how the price of wax is changing, what news travels the roads from the sea. Here, curiosity is almost a craft, and many are as skilled in it as they are with a needle or a hammer. If you ask why they are so attentive, the answer is simple. Tomorrow's profit and tomorrow's bread depend on this attention. The Arno is leisurely at this time of year. Barges drift with the current, and their shadows sprawl across the water like sleepy cats. It's easy to stop on the bridge and look down. The reflection of the dome floats by, like a separate city living by its own laws. The river speaks to people in a language they understand. If the wind is from the hills, the evening will be cool. If the smell of silt is sharp, rain is not far off. Here, festivals are not so much entertainment as they are a demonstration of the power of craftsmanship. A mechanical lion that opens its mouth and offers flowers is not a magic trick, but a report on work done. Someone calculated the trajectory. Someone polished the gears. Someone rehearsed in a cramped basement where the air was always a little short and slightly damp. But on the square, it all looks effortless, and the spectators leave with a feeling that a miracle is possible here, again, tomorrow. The bookshops are noticeable, even to those who cannot read. Inside, it smells of warm ink and paper. The bindings rustle, like new boots. The shopkeeper knows the news as well as the town crier. He is the first to receive letters from other cities, and can tell you who is writing a treatise and who is trying to print poems without the council's permission. Here, books are a way to expand the city without building walls. But this life has another side to it. Today you are praised, and tomorrow you are not acknowledged because the commission went to your neighbor. A patron says, yes, in the morning, and we shall see in the evening. This is how caution emerges. A caution that does not make people cowardly, but teaches them to listen to the pause before a decision. Hence comes the respect for deadlines and for the word that is not given lightly. If you move away from the square and delve deeper into the quarters, the city grows quieter. The inner courtyards are like pockets where the most essential trifles are kept. Here stands a water jug, the water from which must be saved in summer. Here herbs are drying. Here an old man tells his grandson how to sharpen a knife correctly so it doesn't tear the edge. Such scenes rarely make it into paintings, but they are the very things that set the city's rhythm. Not far from Florence lies Vinci. The road there is not difficult, but every turn has its own character. The hills look as if they have been combed with a wide-toothed comb. The olive trees cast narrow shadows, and in the heat, it seems you could take shelter under them. In Vinci, the houses are lower than in the city, and the walls breathe more slowly. Here, there is less talk of taxes and more talk of the weather, which is read not from letters, but from the herbs in the sky. The children in Vinci are given errands without grand words. Take the water, fetch the firewood, don't forget to latch the gate when the wind picks up. They are shown how to hold a knife and how not to spill the oil when the house grows dark earlier than usual. This is how they learn to understand measure, not the abstract kind, but the everyday kind. Between Vinci and Florence, an internal road is constantly traveled. It carries not only goods, but also habits. From the village to the city comes patience. From the city to the village comes an interest in new ways of doing old things. This road is like a nerve. If you pinch it, the hand grows weak. If you care for it, the hand can work with more precision and for longer. This is how the entire region lives, on connections that are not visible on a map. By evening, the aromas change. The fish market retreats into the shade, giving way to spices and fruit. In the taverns, wine is poured, and the conversations grow softer. Some argue about price, some about taste. Someone tells of a new shade they saw at the dyer's today, and everyone immediately understands which festival he is preparing for. In such hours, it becomes especially clear that the city lives not only by its work, but also by the anticipation of tomorrow. When the darkness settles more heavily, the muffled footsteps of the patrol can be heard. The bell speaks briefly and confidently. Lamps by the doors are placed so that the light falls on the threshold and a part of the street, leaving the center in semi-darkness. The city does not wish to wake those already asleep, yet it does not intend to remain unguarded. In this carefulness lies the habit of protecting oneself and one's own. At the end of such a day, the thought of notebooks seems natural. If you have a sheet of paper in your hands, you can record that for which there was no time in conversation. You can preserve an observation until morning, verify it when the streets fill with people again, and return to it when the debate in the square veers toward emotion. Here, notebooks are not a secret, but a quiet necessity, like the water in the courtyard or the bread on the table. Notebooks appear where conversation feels cramped. They are not hidden as a secret. They are simply not shown unnecessarily. They are a working tool, like the cobbler's knife or the mason's measuring ruler. In them, observations are gathered, observations that must first be lived through in silence and then tested in the light of day. Morning spills over the street once more, and the city returns to its familiar rhythm. Carts creak, copper basins clang against the edge of a stall. A boy with a letter dashes across the bridge. All this is the noise from which order is born. This order rests on three things: on accounting, on craftsmanship, and on reputation. If one of them fails, the other two cannot bear the weight for long. Reputation here is not bought. It is gathered in small steps, a timely delivery of lime, an honestly admitted error in a calculation, the ability to say, I will do it tomorrow, and to arrive tomorrow, not a week later. Words, of course, are important, but what is truly valued is the reliability of one's actions. The guilds remain visible and understandable. The sign above the door is both a passport and a promise. Where a knife and a hammer hang, they know the value of steel. Where a brush hangs, they know the value of light and time. They do not favor sudden reforms here. They prefer the long path, where it is clear who is responsible for what. Among the patrons, you often hear the same phrase, we need a thing that will outlive us. So they haggle not only over the price, but over the timeline, the materials, the maintenance. No one wants a bridge to crumble after its first winter, or a fresco to darken after a year. There is no romance in this, but there is respect for the city and for the future. Festivals continue to be an exam. The stage rises as if from nothing, but beneath it lie weeks of night work. The mechanism must work exactly once, in front of everyone. This responsibility makes the masters calmer and more precise than any long speech could. The bookshops multiply, and a new taste emerges within them. For clear exposition, treatises are written so that a craftsman can grasp the idea without an intermediary. Scholarship ceases to be secluded. In this lies the city's special pride. Knowledge begins to live in the workshop, not just in the study. There are quieter sources of curiosity too. In the evening, when the air cools, the conversations on the embankment are not only about prices and news, but also about the strange mechanisms seen at the festival and the new pigments brought from the south. Everyone has their own small laboratory, a corner of a table where they experiment, take notes, and compare. Florence maintains a balance between luxury and strict accounting. One house commissions a family portrait, another, a new beam for the bridge. A neighbor argues about the salt tax, while across the street they discuss the shade of lapis lazuli for a chapel. This is not a split personality, but a common language in which utility and beauty are not enemies. Meanwhile, Vinci lives at its own pace, and this rhythm is audible in the city. People from the hills come to the market. They have a particular way of looking at goods, unhurried and precise. They know the value of water and bread. They know how quickly oil spoils, and therefore they do not believe in promises without measure. With such a customer, the shopkeeper speaks more honestly. Sometimes the road from Vinci to Florence seems like a conversation between two voices. One is urban, brisk and sharp. The other is rural, steady and economical. Together, they create a tone that later becomes audible in the works of the masters. In this tone, there is no haste and no caprice, only clarity and patience. Let us turn to the light that makes the city recognizable. The morning light is direct, almost severe. The noon light is noisy. It argues with the shadows. The evening light is soft, and it reconciles what was in dispute during the day. Artists capture this transition because it teaches the most important lesson. Everything changes, but it changes according to rules that can be seen. And one more rule, old and reliable. Anything must stand firm, even if it is not a stone, but a thought. If a thought does not stand firm, the first wind will blow it away. A new fashion, a new way of speaking. To make it stand, it is tested by deed. A drawing is turned into a model, an idea into a small experiment. If the experiment survives, one can build further. The masters have terms for this, but they do not like to flaunt them. They speak more simply: let's test it. It holds, it pulls, it lays right. This is a language understood by all, from the notary to the message boy. This language has few colors in its speech, but much truth in its work. The dome on the horizon reminds everyone daily that courage is possible with a steady hand. The people below go about their business, while the dome remains silent and bears the weight of the sky. This silence is part of the city's pedagogy. It teaches how to make the loud based on the quiet. Whoever understands this creates work that endures. Engineers and artists meet more often than it seems, not only at festivals, but also by the bridges, by the walls, by the chapels. They need the same thing: a reliable form for meaning. One brings calculation, the other brings vision, and in the end, a thing emerges that the city accepts as its own. Love's long lines and soft transitions, they are reminiscent of water. Now, about the routines without which any craft falls apart. For the mason, to listen to the stone before striking it. For the joiner, to leave room for the wood to move. For the painter, not to disturb a layer that hasn't dried yet. For the printer, to check the line before pressing. Skip one step, and tomorrow you'll have to start over. These simple rules contain no grand slogans, but they hold what keeps the city standing for years. This is why no one laughs at meticulousness here. It is valued as armor against chance. It does not kill beauty. It protects it. Florence loves debate, but it loves a clear resolution even more. Once a decision is made, it is carried out without unnecessary noise. That is when the masters get the chance to make a thing better than it was talked about. And if they succeed, the city remembers the hands, not the words. Meanwhile, the hamlet of Vinci reminds us a sense of measure comes from the land. It teaches proportions without theory. A field shows how much water a sprout asks for. A vineyard suggests how much shade is enough for sweetness. These lessons are quiet, but they seep into the city, along with the people and the goods. There is one more place where the city and the village converge, at the construction site. Stone and lime, wood and iron, ropes, pulleys, wedges. There are no spectators here. Oh, at this moment, one remembers the notebooks again. They connect two speeds: the slow one, observation, and the fast one, decision. Without observation, a decision breaks the thing. Without a decision, observation turns to dust. The notebook keeps them side by side until the time comes to choose. By evening, the city's briskness gives way to a collected calm. The market grows quiet, but does not empty. People linger for a moment to finish a thought. The scent of stewed herbs drifts through the courtyards. The stone rooms grow warmer. In such places, it feels right to speak of work that has not yet been shown to anyone. And if you go down to the river, you can see the lamps reflected in the water, creating double corridors of light. It's easy to think about perspective between them, a perspective that doesn't end at a wall. This simple picture explains why the city and LI participants. A construction site teaches you to speak briefly and think long. Every step must have a purpose, or it will steal a day. And yet, for all its business-like rigor, Florence does not forget about beauty. It is not hidden away in rare halls. It lives on the facades, in the niches, on the modest medallions of the gates. This is the city's language of courtesy. If you are going to build, build in such a way that you feel no shame tomorrow. Let the ornament be small, but precise. From this mixture of habits, accounting, craftsmanship, reputation, measure, attention to light, the soil for future discoveries is formed. The city already knows how to listen to quiet labor and does not demand shouting. It is ready to accept a person who will look long, promise rarely, and often return to what was begun. We are getting closer to the one who will choose a notebook over the crowd. He will need the patience of Vinci and the sharp ear of Florence. He will find use for the city's bridges and the hill roads. He will need a language with which to speak to both stone and air. Before we turn to this biography, let us pause for one more step. Let us look into an evening workshop. On the table, tools. Beside them, a piece of cloth. In the corner, a primed wooden panel. Nothing superfluous, but enough of everything. This is what readiness looks like. And so, the city has had its say. It has given the rhythm, the light, the measure. Now it is the turn of the person who knows how to gather these into a single gesture. In the next fragment, we will take another step closer to him, preserving the pace and breadth of this place. The day draws toward evening, and the city changes its voice once more. Where the market once clamored, the rustling of brooms is now heard. People close their shutters, but do not end their conversations. They continue them in the shops, on the doorsteps, on the bridges. The light in the workshops becomes low and precise. It falls in stripes across the tables, the tools, the open sheets. It reveals where a thing's weak point lies. In such moments, solutions are born that seemed impossible by daylight. The city has taught this. It does not care for loud promises, but it respects verification. If today turned out slightly better than yesterday, that is already a victory. On such small victories, great changes rest. Up above, on the towers, the air is clearer. From there, one can see how the Arno flows from light into shadow. From there, it is clear that the city is a multitude of precise habits converging on a single intention: to live well and to endure. While the furnaces are being banked below, in one of the houses, someone draws a pen from an inkwell. Before them lies a sheet with room enough for both observations and doubts. The notebook does not ask for a spectacular thought. It requires an honest fact. It accepts both successes and dead ends. This is how the space is prepared for the person who will look upon water as a mechanism, upon a wing as a pact with the air, upon a body as the work of perfect nature. Before we have even named him, the city itself leads us to him with a thread woven from craft, accounting, habits, and light. This thread will not snap in Milan, nor weaken in Rome, for it has a simple foundation: respect for work. Florence gave this foundation its form. It taught how to unite calculation and beauty, to explain the complex in simple words, to hold a pause before a decision, and not to fear revision. Vinci added something else: patience with growth. There they know that results come slowly, and that a mistake is not a reason for shouting, but a reason for the next attempt. With this measure, it is easier to endure any winter. The city and the village met in the person we will soon see up close. He will have places to learn and to debate. He will have those to ask and those to challenge. He will be given opportunity, but will be held accountable. Before we move on, a few more strokes to complete the portrait of this environment. Here they value not only what is visible, they value preparation, the calculation of drying time, the backup plans that save the work at the last moment. In the chapels, they check the light in the morning and the evening so as not to err in the tone. On the construction site, they count their steps so the load does not break the rhythm. In the shops, they keep records of debts more accurately than they remember proverbs. Even music here teaches discipline. Dance is not only joy, but also a precise measure of steps. The musician knows where to stop the note, so the listener hears the silence as part of the melody. Hence comes the love for the pause. A pause does not signify emptiness. It signifies attention. In the pause, the thing speaks for itself. The masters trust this pause too. Before continuing a line, they let it stand. Before cutting stone, they listen to its sound. Before printing a sheet, they check the line in a mirror. A mirror is an important detail. It makes it easier to see the mistake and the character. It makes an object look more honest. A mirror teaches one to converse not only with the object, but also with oneself. In such an environment, a diary is not a luxury. It is an extension of one's hands. The stonemason holds a plumb line. The draftsman holds a pen. The engineer holds a knot that can be untied after a failed attempt. Now, about the road our hero will take. It will begin with small errands, continue with first commissions and holidays, and lead to courtyards where decisions are made quickly and a mistake costs dearly. There, he will find people whose names we have already heard in the square. They are accustomed to power and to the game. They need those who can carefully demonstrate strength. They need a mind that is not frightened by reality. But before naming these names, let's return to the room with the lamp. On the table lie grains of pigment. Next to it, a coarse cloth for wiping, and on the edge, a pen, sharpened so as not to scratch the paper. This is all that is needed to begin a conversation with the future. Not a loud one, a calm one, not a festive one, a working one. No successful creation will ever conclude this conversation, because what comes next is rarely visible from the outside. Constant checking and correcting, retraining the hand, conversing with the material as an equal. The water will say, "Don't break me, go around." The wood will ask for a gap to be left for breathing. The iron will demand patience with temperature. Human skin, respect for light and shadow. From these requests, character will be formed. It will be neither loud nor weak-willed. It will be resilient. It is trusted with objects destined to live in the world of people. For now, the city has not yet fallen asleep. Somewhere, they are rehearsing tomorrow's procession. Somewhere, they are counting barrels of oil. Somewhere, they are calculating how many days the journey to the sea will take. There is no boredom in such calculations. They provide confidence and room for courage. Courage without calculation breaks lives. Calculation without courage deprives it of meaning. Florence taught how to combine these two movements. Vinci taught to remember the simple. The roads reminded that the world is wider than any courtyard. This is enough to give birth to a gaze that does not lose its sense of measure. We have approached the boundary between the environment and the biography. Beyond it, are the names of houses and people, rooms where paintings and machines are commissioned, quiet but persistent work with those who rule and wage war. Before stepping over this boundary, let us recall the main thing. The city rests on those who are rarely named, on those who listen to stone and water, who can calculate and are not afraid to correct. Our hero will join this rank. He will take from the city the language of precision, from the hills, patience, from the roads, a taste for distant questions. We will open the notebooks and see lines that are read from right to left. We will see notes about water, about the wing, about the heart, about bridges. We will see handwriting devoid of posturing, and we will understand why he needed such silence. One more glance out the window, and we can begin the next part. The night has grown denser, but the city has not gone dark. The lamps in a few windows burn steadily. They have enough oil, just as we have enough patience. Next, we will name the name, tell of the character and habits, of the patrons and their rules, of the legends that circulate more quietly than rumors. For now, a moment without fanfare. We will close the shutters and leave the pen on the table. When it touches the paper again, the story of the man and the intrigues of his time will begin. Imagine the same room with the light of a lamp. The table is clean, the pen is finely sharpened, and a notebook lies nearby. We will name the man later. For now, let's look at what his character is made of. He is drawn not to haste, but to clarity. He loves to observe longer than is customary and to test thought with action. If something can be taken apart and put back together, he does so. If something resists, he writes down the question and returns to it. In a day, a month, a year. He is often mistaken for a silent type, but this is not a silence without thought. It is a working pause. He knows how to hear an object resist. Wood responds in its own way, metal in its own way, fabric in its own way. He does not get angry at the resistance. He learns from it. This is where his perfectionism manifests itself. Not in a desire to impress, but in the habit of bringing things to an honest clarity. The notebooks become a map. In them, drawings and words, numbers and small conclusions live side by side. The handwriting runs from right to left. It's more convenient that way. The ink doesn't smudge. The habit of arguing with his own notes makes the notebook resemble a workshop. Everything here is in motion. Ideas do not sit in gold. They are constantly tested for strength. If something doesn't add up, he writes in large letters, "Why?" and leaves space next to it. By day, he might be occupied with a festival or a commission. He must plan a device to amaze the crowd, calculate the path of ropes and wheels, figure out where to hide the people who will set the mechanism in motion. In such hours, he is focused and precise. But what truly brings him joy is not the applause, but that single moment when the complex works as simply as the straightforward. In the evening, something else returns, the quiet. He takes out a sheet, and a wing appears on it. Not a general outline, but a joint, a membrane, a tension. He draws not for beauty's sake. He draws to understand what one can rely upon. Notes about air appear nearby. For him, agreement is what matters, not victory. The wing must be the wind's partner. He is also fascinated by waters. He watches how a stream flows around a stone, how ripples spread across the surface, how a dam withstands the pressure. Water reminds him of speech. It too has its stresses and pauses. If you mistake the pause, it will begin to erode the bank. Thus, channels, sluices, dams, and small bridges appear on the sheet, and next to them, a note about the people who will maintain it all. The conception is always linked to the labors that follow it. He thinks much about the body, not about beauty beyond measure, but about the work of muscles and joints. He observes how a tendon stretches, how fingers grasp an object, how the heart sets the rhythm. He needs a truthful gesture. Then the painting will be convincing, even in silence. He respects mysteries, but has no love for mystification. Fabric is explained by light, a smile by mood, and not by trickery. In conversation, he is calm. He knows how to ask short questions and listen to long answers. If the interlocutor is important, he does not argue for show. He seeks a common language. Most often, it is the language of the work itself. Show me how you made this. Let me look inside. Let me touch it. After such a conversation, people leave with a desire to correct, not to conquer. He has luck with patrons, but this luck is relative. He is interesting to those who love not only a painting on the wall, but also work at the city's foundations. That is why he is called to places where order must be brought to the waters, a shore reinforced, a device for a festival created, or defenses planned. He is acquainted with risk, but does not romanticize it. There should be just enough risk for the thing to come into being. Sometimes, miracles are attributed to him. Stories grow faster than notepad pages. They tell of music coming from a mechanical head, of beasts on wheels, of light tricks in the squares. He does not argue. He knows. A miracle is discipline, brought to the point where it seems like magic. Let the stories live their own life, while he returns to the small details, without which nothing works. His home changes, his habits, almost not. He needs a light-colored wall, a table, a place for sheets, a box with tools, a corner for models. Nearby are objects that answer immediately. A piece of fabric, a spring, a wood chip with a neat crack. The conversation with an object must begin without intermediaries. He changes roles with ease. In the morning, an artist. By day, an engineer. In the evening, a master of ceremonies for a festival. But these roles share a single root. Attention to light, to load, to the movement of people in a confined space. Because of this, he sees what escapes the hasty eye. A narrow passage, an unnecessary step, an ill-considered pause. Sometimes he abandons what he has begun. To those around him, this seems strange, or even hurtful. But the rule is simple. It is better to leave an honest, unfinished question in the notebook than to bring something to external completion when you don't believe in it internally. This is not a weakness, but a way of not betraying one's own sense of measure. He knows how to be a friend, though he often appears solitary. He likes people who tolerate a slow conversation and know how to laugh without malice. With them, he shares observations and plans, unafraid of being misunderstood. He does not need admiration. He needs a silence in which one can hear a thought turn into action. The city receives him in different ways. In some places, they await a miracle. In others, they demand a report. In yet others, they scrutinize the cost. He takes no offense. Each place has its own measure of expectations. Only one thing is important to him, that the work does not go to waste when he is gone. Then one can say the day was not lived in vain. Closer to night, a long line appears in the notebooks. It is not just a stroke, but a road. It leads the eye to people whose word changes the fate of streets and gates. The conversation with them will be shorter, but the responsibility greater. There, not only talent will be required, but also character. A little later, we will learn the names of these houses and see behind which doors he works, to whom he writes letters, and what he demands in return. For now, we remain at the table with the lamp and the silence. Before us is a man who connects the slow with the precise, and who possesses a rare gift, turning curiosity into order. He often talks to himself through drawing. The pen makes a loop, and a thought unfolds. An arrow points to a weak spot, a small number indicates a proportion. Sometimes, a funny little sketch appears nearby, as a sign. Don't forget to look lightly. Where others see importance, he likes to test for simplicity. Only haste hinders him. Haste breaks the conversation with the material and turns it into a command. That is why he asks for one more day, one more night, one more attempt. For him, a deadline is not a race, but a frame he must honestly fit within. In crowded houses, he remains reserved. He looks at the ceiling, the windows, the doors, at how people move. Trajectories matter to him. If the guests jostle, it means it's narrow somewhere. If the candles smoke, it means the air is moving the wrong way. Thus, he mentally repairs the house, in which he is merely a guest. He hears different things about himself. To some, he seems too meticulous. To others, too bold. He smiles and continues working. Fame is not his goal. The goal is a thing that is not ashamed of time. Funny stories love to be born around serious people. They say about him that he can paint laughter so that it laughs back, or design a staircase that makes thinking easier. Let them talk. He knows. A good staircase really does ease the mind. If you were to ask him what is most difficult, the answer would be simple. To hold to the measure. Not to overdo the brilliance. Not to skimp on the labor. Not to hide the mistakes. Not to forget the simple needs of people. This measure is quiet, but it holds the complex together. Sometimes he travels to another city and takes the minimum with him. A pen, a few sheets, a small box of charcoal, a knife for sharpening, a couple of models. He doesn't need many things to begin. He needs a place for the light, a work table, and a silence in which his own breathing can be heard. And yet, he is not a hermit. He knows how to be useful to the court, the fair, the builders, and the musicians. This is his strength. He connects worlds that usually argue. And when these worlds look at each other more calmly, he considers the day a success. Very soon, doors will appear behind which miracles and order are demanded simultaneously. We will see them from the inside and understand why his notebooks sometimes resemble battle maps, and sometimes instructions for a festival where everything must work without a sound. A little later, we will learn who opened these doors and what conditions were set. For now, let us leave the pen hovering over the sheet and give the floor to silence. Let us begin with those who loved art no less than power. In Florence, the name Medici sounds like a password. They gather around them people who feel confined by the limits of a craft. They like bold concepts, but even more, the utility derived from them. The ability to turn a festival into proof of the city's capabilities is valued here no less than a painting above a fireplace. Therefore, our hero gets a chance not only to paint and build, but also to devise things that demonstrate Florence's ability to speak the language of miracles and order simultaneously. In the Medici palaces, He sees how image works together with accounting, festival machines, processions, plays of light. All this makes politics visible and understandable. Where words provoke argument, a mechanism persuades more quietly. And yet, he does not dissolve into the court. He keeps his distance, like a master who is responsible not for the guest's smiles, but for ensuring the wheel turns exactly once, without a hitch. He also has patrons of a different breed. Milan calls with a practical voice. The court of Ludovico Sforza demands order on par with brilliance. The city needs new fortifications, new bridges, new festivals with an engineering core. Milan is a school of discipline where an idea must pass through a drawing, a model, a test, and only then to the square dot dot. This is close to our hero's heart. Here they value not noise, but reliability. In Milan, he often writes and draws simultaneously. In the morning, a note on proportions. By day, a model. In the evening, a letter explaining that 2 more days are needed for testing. He needs no urging. He himself dislikes rushing, but he honestly warns if the concept requires more time. This saves both the project and the relationship. In such places, legends are spoken of in whispers. They say he built a beast that moves without people inside, that he created music that plays without musicians. He smiles and does not argue. What matters to him is different, that the mechanism does not betray him at the most crucial moment. He knows the price of the crowd's expectation and the price of an error in front of the court. But the most intense scene awaits him in another part of Italy. The name Cesare Borgia sounds like a test of strength. He needs speed, maps, fortifications, control of water and routes. Here, delays are not forgiven, and unnecessary words are disliked. Our hero brings what he does best, a gaze that sees the field as a problem, and a hand that knows how to turn that problem into a plan. With him, he travels through the terrain, notes the changes in elevation, fords, bridges, warehouses. He is interested in how quickly a messenger can get through, and where to take shelter from the wind. A map, for him, is not a drawing, but a tool for solving problems. He records where water can be channeled, where a wall can be strengthened, where one can bypass without a fight. These lines contain no heroism, but much responsibility. People will walk along the lines he has left on the sheet. A dangerous client values him for his calmness. He speaks briefly and does exactly what he promised. If something is impossible, he writes exactly that. Not out of stubbornness, out of respect for the work. In such conditions, any excess confidence is deadly dangerous. This is why words like verify, clarify, and proved viable are so abundant in his notebooks. This is not excessive caution, but a way to save people's lives and preserve the work's purpose. Between courts and roads, he has personal time left. He returns to the wing and the water, to the gesture of a hand, to a smile that cannot be explained by a single word. Sometimes he takes a sheet and writes only numbers, rhythm, proportions, ratios. Sometimes he draws a few folds of fabric, as if conversing with them about light. This is how he maintains the balance between the external and the internal. Rumors grow in different ways. Some see in him a court magician, others a pedant with a ruler. He corrects neither. He prefers to let the thing speak. If a bridge stands through the winter, that is the answer. If a device operates without failure, that is the answer. If a painting is remembered even when the festival's music has faded, That too is the answer. Patrons have their own characters and conditions. Some demand speed and brilliance. Others, accounting and reports. He adapts without betraying himself. Where radiance is needed, he adds it in measure. Where silence is needed, he takes a step back and lets the form do the work. He does not seek conflict. He seeks precision, because precision is the only language understood by all. Sometimes he gets bored at celebrations. He watches the crowd applaud and thinks about how to remove one superfluous part to make the lever's action smoother. In such moments, it's clear that the workshop is closer to his heart than the hall. But he respects the hall because the hall pays for the workshop. With the Medici, he is connected not only by work, but also by a taste for conversation. They know how to listen about mathematics and painting, and music in engineering. They appreciate the connections between things that usually do not meet. This is a rare gift in a patron, not to demand simplifications where complexity is needed. With the Sforza, he is united by discipline. There, they value the paper that shows how an idea became a thing. From draft to test. From test to implementation. This is how trust is born. Not in a name, but in a process. With Borgia, he is bound by the honesty of the tool. A map or a fortification tolerates no rhetoric. It either works or it doesn't. You cannot persuade it to hold through the night and the rain. That is why he chooses his words as he chooses stone, for fracture and for endurance. On this path, he often has to act as a translator between worlds, to explain to engineers why an artist needs perspective, to explain to artists why an engineer needs the silence of calculations, to convey the same movement in different languages, so that all participants see the common task. Sometimes he encounters envy. To some, it seems he is entrusted with too much. To others, that he thinks for too long. He responds in his usual way, with work. He delivers work that speaks more clearly than arguments. His own legend does not belong to him. It is forged in the squares and in the corridors of palaces. He does not try to control it. He is interested in what can be controlled. The hand, time, the material, the sequence of steps. In his letters, he rarely asks. More often, he explains how the task is structured and what is needed for the result. If the patron understands, things move quickly. If not, he does not raise his voice. He changes the way he explains. Thus pass several years on the road, with models, rehearsals, maps, ... Cities change, but the habit remains. First to look, then to speak, and almost always, to write. The notebook becomes the place where the day coalesces into meaning. A little later, we will learn how this attention to form and measure will affect his major works. For now, let us remember a simple thing. He has the same approach to a bridge and to a smile, to a stage and to a wall. First, to understand the support, then to let it work, and only after that, to adorn. His days resemble an alternation of depth and surface. On the outside, receptions, consultations, commissions, short conversations in corridors. On the inside, work that dislikes witnesses. He knows how to keep these two levels separate. This is not coldness, but a way of not spilling what is most important. Sometimes he is asked, why so long? The answer is simple. The task requires time no less than material. Stone needs a strike and a pause. paint, a layer and drying, a thought, a draft and verification. But the result asks for no apologies. It takes its place and holds without words. There are gestures that reveal his character. He runs a finger along a line as if checking it by ear. He squints slightly when the light is too direct. He rearranges objects so that none hinders another. These are not mere manners. They are the language in which he converses with things. Sometimes he plays the role of a wonder maker, but more often, the role of a mechanic who provides the miracle with its mechanism. After the crowd has dispersed, he returns to the stage and sees what can be improved without witnesses. The fame departs, but the precision remains. This fidelity to precision makes his solitude serene. People love to tell stories about him, that he could calm a nervous horse with words alone, that he taught a clock spring to obey his fingers, that he painted a smile that changes with the viewer's gaze. He neither confirms nor denies. Let the legends live their own life, while he continues to live his. With friends, he is straightforward. In the evening, he might joke about his own habits, saying he takes too long to choose a spot for the lamp. But in truth, he is not affectingly eccentric. He needs order, otherwise he loses the thread. Order is not a strict cage. It is a quiet guarantee that a thought will not vanish. If you look at his day from above, 3 circles are visible. The first, the city with its affairs. The second, the workshop with its task. The third, the notebook with questions you won't finish today. There are bridges between the circles. He walks across them as confidently as if he built them himself. Sometimes he has to explain simple things. Why so many sketches? Why so many numbers? Because the eye can err, but the number cannot. Because the hand learns through repetition, not through inspiration. Because inspiration comes when everything is ready for work. He doesn't dislike festivities, but on the nights that follow, he cannot fall asleep for a long time. What remains in his head are not faces, but knots and levers. Not fanfares, but the silence of the stage when it empties. Into this silence, it is easy to pose questions and hear simple answers in return. He is honest with patrons. If they demand brilliance, he warns them where brilliance is dangerous. If they demand speed, he explains the price of haste. He dislikes the word impossible, but uses it in defense of the work. Those who understand value him all the more. Those who do not simply seek others. He is at peace with this. He knows the value of solitude. Solitude is not always sadness. Sometimes it is freedom from others' gestures, so as not to disrupt one's own. Sometimes, a way to manage without congratulations that would have to be paid for with new promises. Sometimes, a necessity to preserve a rhythm that cannot be explained in words. He finds it easy to change cities and ceilings because he carries the essentials with him. A pen, a few sheets, a small box of charcoal, a couple of models, and the habit of verification. This is enough to begin a conversation with any place. When he finds himself in a palace, his eye automatically measures the space, where the entrances and exits are, where the light falls, where the musicians should stand, how the crowd will move. All this is not curiosity, but professional caution. It saves both the festival and the painting. Sometimes he is asked about secrets. He smiles. There aren't as many secrets as it seems. There is attentiveness and patience. There is a point where an object stops arguing with you and starts working with you. You must reach that point, and only then can you speak of beauty. He rarely argues about lofty ideas. He prefers conversation about how a thing is made, how a fold holds its shape, how a shadow behaves on a warm primer, what step a mechanism needs so it doesn't choke. In these conversations, he truly comes alive. Among his pupils, his circle varies. To some, he gives simple tasks. To others, he entrusts a drawing. He doesn't promise quick miracles. He shows how to test a thought and not be afraid to correct it. The best compliment he can give a pupil is to say, "You have become more attentive." There are days when nothing works. The ink bleeds, the line trembles, the numbers don't add up. He records this honestly and goes to sleep. In the morning, he looks with a fresh eye and finds the missed step. A defeat in the notebook is not a stigma. It is a trace that helps to avoid the pit next time. He has his own measure of delight. It is quiet. If a thing has succeeded, he doesn't shout. He simply sits beside it and watches how it lives on its own. If it lives, then it was all for a reason. If not, he looks for the cause without touching anything superfluous. In a crowd, he is unnoticeable, but alone with an object he becomes more resolute. He can set aside, without pity, something that took a month of work if he realizes he chose the wrong path. This fortitude isn't flashy, but it is invaluable. With the years, he writes more and more. Not letters of request, but notes about what needs to be done. These notes are not for others' eyes. They are for making the day coalesce into a system. When the notebook is closed, it becomes clear that the time was not wasted. A little later, another trait will serve us well: the ability to hear the silence between glances. In painting, it is no less important than color. It holds the pause from which a smile, or a gesture, or an almost imperceptible movement of the hand emerges. This quality will connect his observations with what we will see on the wall and on the board. There is a slight sadness in him, not from failures, from the world's fragmentation. He wishes to gather everything into one clear mechanism: water, air, body, light, numbers. But the world does not always allow it, and he learns to accept this incompleteness as part of the truth. In conversations with patrons, he does not promise eternity. He promises a term for which he can vouch. It is important to him that a thing ages honestly, not crumbling from its own brilliance. He chooses durability, even if it appears more modest. Sometimes he lingers in refectories. He observes the long table, the rhythm of the dishes, how people listen to each other, and how they do not. These observations later return in his work, in a gesture, a pause, a gaze that connects the far ends of the room. He has a special relationship with a smile. He does not believe in a smile without a cause. A smile is not just the mouth. It is the corners of the eyes, the line of the cheekbone, the movement of a hand resting on an armrest. He knows how to make it quiet and alive. We will see this closer a little later. Of light and shadow, he speaks simply. Light must know how to whisper. If it shouts, it kills the form. If it is too timid, the form is not born. Therefore, he teaches the light to speak in a hushed tone. From this, a special softness is born, one that does not catch the eye, but draws the gaze. Is any of this eternal? He is not sure, but he is sure of this. Honest work outlives a season. The city changes, the courts change, the clients change, but a thing in which there is measure and attention remains understandable even years later. Soon, scenes will appear where all this comes together. A long refectory with even light, a table where people sit, and one sharp moment, not loud, but decisive. We will look at the hands, at the salt, at the glances. We will see how silence works more precisely than words. And then, a face where the smile offers no final answer. It does not choose between joy and sorrow, and therefore seems alive. We will listen to the soft haze that has no boundaries, and understand why he so believed in the silence of light. But that is a little later. For now, before us is the same table, the same lamp, the same notebook. The pen lies nearby, and a coolness drifts from the window. He will pick up the pen when the city has fallen completely silent, and he will begin to do that for which all these years of observation were needed. To show the truth so quietly that it will resonate for a long time, let us open the quiet door and enter the long refectory. The light here is even, like breath before sleep. The table stretches along the wall. On it are bread, salt, simple tableware. At the end, a window with a distant landscape. The room is simple, but it holds a moment that makes the air stand still. In the center sits the teacher. His silhouette is collected and calm. His hands are apart, one toward the bread, the other toward the cup. Before us is not a loud scene, but an instant when a word lands in the very heart of the room. We see how the table divides the space into two shores. There, the disciples with their surge of emotions. Here, the even line of objects. This line contains the wave ... It prevents it from shattering the silence of the main gesture. Perspective works as a secret guide. The lines of the walls and ceiling converge at a point behind the teacher's head. This is not a trick, but a quiet solution. The gaze naturally travels toward the meaning, even if the listener is tired. The apostles sit in groups of 3. Each group is like a separate chord in the common music. In one chord, surprise. In another, protest. In a third, fright mixed with questioning. The music moves from the edge to the center and collides with the silence that sits in the middle. Hands speak no less than faces. Someone extends a palm forward, as if wanting to catch a word. Someone pushes the air away, trying to push back the news. Someone seeks support in the table. Thus, a roundelay of gestures is born, and each has its own rhythm. Let us pay attention to the salt. Small detail, a spilled pinch. It does not shout, but adds a quiet sign. The habitual order in this house has been disrupted. Such signs require no commentary. They work on the level of feeling. There is another detail, a purse in a hand that could easily be mistaken for an ordinary bag. It lies almost unnoticed, like a thought one would rather not notice. But it is on such details that the memory of the scene rests. Faces are not repeated. There is no mask of surprise, number 1, number 2. There are shades, soft fear, sharp questioning, stifled hope. All this moves in a circle, and the circle stops at the center, where the silence is harder than stone. The tableware and bread are painted as if they could be picked up. The edges of the plates do not cut the eye. The knives do not shine with ostentatious gleam. Here they do not care for theatrical light. Here light serves the form and leaves room for breath. If you linger at the center, you will notice how calmly the figure sits, around whom everything moves. Its geometry is simple, a triangle of shoulders and arms, anchored on the table. The form provides stability, and stability provides meaning. The 3 windows on the back wall are not for decoration. They expand the air. The distant landscape looks like a promise that no one can yet read. Inside, it is cramped with feelings. Outside the windows, it is free and even. To the left and right, you can hear voices overlapping. But in painting, one can change the volume without sound. Here, volume is the contrast of gestures and the pause between them. The quieter the center, the more distinctly the edges resound. The bread on the table is not a symbol for symbolism's sake. It has weight, crumbs, a warm color. The cup is not a shining chalice, but tableware used every day. The scene rests on the truth of objects. They make the miracle convincing. Let us note how the distances are constructed. There is air between the people, and it works. It is not emptiness, but space for the movement of thought. Where there is little air, there is the heat of argument. Where there is more, there is readiness to listen. We can almost hear the rustle of fabric. The folds do not break sharply. They breathe. The light does not cut them out with a knife. It passes over them like a hand over water. This makes the faces seem alive without excessive sharpness. There is also a quiet discrepancy, often discussed. The technique of wall painting chosen here is risky. The layer is not as durable as in fresco, and time takes its toll. But in our story, what matters more is not the deterioration of the layer, but how long the conception endures. The conception lives in the composition. Even if the paint has faded, the movement of the glances remains clear. The path of the eye is like a map one can follow even hundreds of years later. This is the durability of an idea. Let us try to read the scene as a conversation. The words have already been spoken, and now the space speaks. It poses a question to every face. What do you hear in what was said? And we see the answers, not with mouths, but with hands. Attention to detail does not hinder the whole. On the contrary, a grand silence is assembled from small observations. This silence is the painting's main instrument. It balances the impulse and makes visible what cannot be touched. Let us look at the center once more. The face is calm, but not empty. There is no tense storm there, but a clarity of a decision made. From it, a wave ripples out to the edges, and we observe how it changes people. If you move along the group on the right, you will notice different speeds of reaction. One disbelieves, another questions, a third has already understood. These speeds create the rhythm. Without rhythm, the scene would be flat. On the left, there is its own movement. Someone leans forward as if to hear better. Someone recoils as if from something hot. In every gesture, an internal count is audible. 1 dash, I think. 2, I understand. 3, I accept. The refectory aids the scene. It does not oppress with richness, does not distract. Its scale is precisely enough to hold 12 voices and 1 center. The architecture becomes a partner, not a decoration. We note one more thing. The viewer's gaze is also a participant in the composition. The artist leaves a place for them at the table. We are not observing from the outside. It is as if we are joining the row and must choose where to place our hands. Altogether, this creates a rare feeling. Moment and eternity meet without noise. The moment is sharp, but it does not tear time. It is woven into it like a strong thread and holds the fabric whole. There is no theatrical darkness here, no loud contrast. There is light that speaks in a hushed tone, and that is enough. It gives form, but does not take away the right to breathe. That is why the scene seems alive in its silence. What does this hall teach? That a gesture is more important than a pose. That a pause can say more than speech. That the truth of an object is stronger than effect. A little later, this rule will serve us well. We will look at another face, where the smile offers no final answer. There, the light will be even softer, the lines even more delicate, and the air like a fine haze. But that is already the next door. No fanfares, no adornments. Just a woman sitting in a calm chair. A hand rests on the armrest. Shoulders are relaxed. Her gaze is directed at us, but without pressure. The first thing one feels is the soft air between the layers. There is no sharp boundary between shadow and light. The transitions are so smooth that the eye cannot find a seam. This breath is the very sfumato. Sfumato is not a fog for the sake of mystery. It is a way of giving form time. The light speaks in a hushed tone. The shadow answers just as quietly. From this conversation, skin is born, not skin that shines, but skin that lives. The smile is not imposed. It appeared where the lines ceased to argue. Slightly raised corners of the lips, a gentle movement of the cheeks, and most importantly, a gaze that is in no hurry. Let us look at the eyes. There is no harsh accent in them. The eyelids softly hold the light. The pupil is not readjusted for effect. Therefore, the gaze does not pierce or repel. It accepts. The hand is an important part of this silence. It rests confidently and calmly. Not a single finger is tense, yet the whole hand is gathered. In this gesture, one hears respect for one's place in the world. The clothing does not shout about status. The folds are simple. There are few of them. The fabric does not argue with the face. It agrees with it, as a good background agrees with a song. The background is another hero. Behind the shoulders, a distant road, a bridge, water, rock formations. The landscape is neither hospitable nor hostile. It is like time, patient and long. If you trace a path with your gaze from the hand to the face, and then to the horizon, you get a quiet trajectory. It does not require effort. It guides. Thus, the viewer becomes a participant in the painting. Color speaks cautiously. Earthy, warm, deep tones do not argue with each other. Nothing falls out of line. Therefore, the face seems whole, not assembled from parts. Let us try to catch the moment when the smile changes. If you look at the mouth, it is clearer. If you shift your gaze to the eyes, it retreats into a pause. This is how the distribution of accents works. Different points, different answers. The light in this painting does not push. It warms, like a lamp in a room. It gives you the opportunity to look closer. And the longer you look, the less you want to leave. The composition is simple and steadfast. The figure is turned at a 3/4 view. The hands serve as support. The shoulders as a bridge. Nothing superfluous in the foreground. No object that would distract the eye. If you compare it to a noisy square, the painting is like a single window still open. Even though the city has already fallen asleep, from it comes an even air, and it is this that holds the mood. Sfumato works not only on the face, it connects the person and the landscape. There is no gap between the near and the far. Every part breathes at the same pace. This softness does not mean vagueness. Contours exist, but they are alive. They do not draw a boundary. They negotiate it. Therefore, everything seems natural. In the smile, There is a subtle honesty. It does not promise happiness, but neither does it pass judgment. It accepts life as it is, with light, shadow, and a place for silence. The hand on the armrest makes another gesture. It holds us in the present. As long as the hand rests so confidently, there is enough time. This sensation is rare and precious. The landscape breathes in its own way. Rivers meander, stones age, bridges connect shores. The distant road does not urgently call. It simply shows that the world will continue without shouting. Now, let's look at the tonal transitions. The shadows are not black. The light is not white. Between them are steps, like in a good staircase. It is convenient for the gaze to ascend them. Why is this all so calming? Because there is no struggle for attention here. The painting has enough of its own slow strength. It does not pull the viewer. It holds them. And this is the secret of its enduring appeal. You come closer, one detail appears. You step back, the whole connects. The painting does not impose a mode of viewing. It accepts any pace. Rumors and legends surrounding the portrait live separately. You can listen to them, but it is not necessary. All the answers are already in how the shadow falls on the cheek and how the hand touches the armrest. The pause is the most important part of the impression. It gives the eye the opportunity not to rush. If you look in silence, the smile becomes warmer. If you start searching for a mystery, it closes up. There is no ostentatious virtuosity here. There is discipline hidden beneath the softness. Every layer was applied at the right time. Every drying period was given its due. We do not feel the labor, and this is the sign of the highest labor. When everything is done correctly, the effort disappears from view. What remains is a clarity that is difficult to explain, but easy to accept. Some portraits smile at the viewer. Here it is the opposite. The viewer learns to smile at the painting. Not broadly, calmly. And this changes them more than it seems. If you linger near the left shoulder and shift your gaze to the horizon, you will feel a slight movement of air. The painting does not stand still. It floats very slowly. It is from this slow movement that the feeling of life is born. The image does not require a biography to be convincing. It is self-sufficient. But if you know how much time goes into such softness, respect for the work only grows. Here, sfumato is not a technique, but a character. It is a way of speaking without pressure, a way to leave room for the silence of the interlocutor. That is why the painting outlives the noise of centuries. Gazing at it, you understand. The mystery lies not in the secret of the smile, but in the balance of the parts, in how the hand holds the present, and the landscape holds the distance, in how the gaze neither judges nor asks. A little later, this lesson in balance will serve us well. It is directly connected to the notebooks, where wings, maps, bridges, and the study of the body were born. There, the same soft insistence of form exists. We will take a step from the face to the sheets of paper. We will see how thought turned into lines, how numbers held the conception in place, and why incompleteness is not a flaw, but the honesty of the path. Before us are the notebooks. They preserve not answers, but the movement of thought. Every page is like a workshop. Here live lines, numbers, arrows, notes, questions. The handwriting runs from right to left. It's more convenient for the hand and calmer for the ink. The main thing is not the direction, but the habit of conversing honestly with the problem. Let us begin with the air. A wing appears on the sheet, not a general silhouette, but joints and membranes. Nearby, notes on tension, steps, rhythm. For him, air is a partner, not a rival. If you can come to an agreement with it, flight becomes not a miracle, but a continuation of a step. He goes through solutions. A bird flaps its wing. A man can aid himself with a lever. A bird changes the angle of its feather. A man adjusts the step of a mechanism. His audacity lies not in bravado, but in the patience to test. Every correction is another step toward agreement with the wind. Some sheets are filled with screws. A spiral plane screws itself into the sky, if given the proper motion. The idea is fragile, but it points the way to combine lightness, thrust, and controllability. He notes, tests needed in different winds. Then comes water. He observes how a stream flows around a stone, how a bank erodes, where water seeks a weak spot. From this, channels, sluices, pumps, water lifting wheels. The city needs not miracles, but calm reliability. Nearby bridges, demountable ones, for hasty crossings, permanent ones, for long roads. He counts the steps, weight, wind direction, and writes, better to test small than to destroy large. In this, one hears respect for the people who will walk across the bridge. There are also machines of war. They are not described with enthusiasm. This is the language of a time that demands walls and order. He tries to make destruction manageable and still returns to things that build. Further, maps, mountains, valleys, rivers, fords, warehouses. For him, a map is not a decoration, but a tool. One can travel by it at night if one made it soberly by day. Anatomy. He looks at the body with respect for its design, not for sensation's sake, but for the truth of a gesture. For a hand in a painting to rest as it does in life, one must know the path of the tendon and the course of the muscle. He records what he sees: layer thickness, fiber direction, valve function. Not everything can be published in his lifetime, but everything can be understood and preserved in a notebook. What matters to him is not the fame of discovery, but the clarity of the design. Sometimes poetry and calculation live side by side. A sketch of a vortex, next to a number. A bird, next to a formula. A short phrase, light loves a soft surface. These are not decorations, but memory markers. He often leaves work halfway. To some, this seems a weakness, but in him, incompleteness is honesty. If the support is not found, one cannot build the floors. He does not bargain with his own doubt. These sheets breathe of the future. Not because they predicted everything, but because they taught how to look at a problem without fear. To err, to test, to carry the result over to the next day. Now, about the legacy. It is rarely measured by the quantity of finished works. It is heard in how artists hold light and how engineers hold a thought in a construction. Sfumato became not just a technique, but an ethic, to speak softly but precisely, not to cut form with resonance, but to listen to it fully. This they still learn from him today. The perspective in the refectory is not merely a play of lines. It is a lesson in how the gaze travels toward meaning. The same logic works in halls and on screens. This is the true engineering of a vision. Maps teach how to connect the levels of the world, not only roads and fords, but also time and effort. For him, a map is a contract between a place and a person. If the contract is honest, the path is clearer, even if not shorter. Bridges and machines remind us of balance. Force without measure destroys. Measure without force lulls. His goal is the point where work stands without spectacle, and where spectacle does not deceive the work. In anatomy, he brought the artist and the physician closer. Painting received a gesture that does not argue with the body. Medicine received a gaze that is not afraid of details. Both sides benefited from respect for fact. Solitude is not a myth, but a tool. In silence, one hears better where a thing lies, where a line tries to please, where it speaks the truth. He chose truth, even if it meant slowing down. Many projects remained on paper, but paper is not a graveyard of ideas. It is a field where thought awaits its material. Sometimes it comes in 100 years, sometimes in 500. The notebooks are a projector of time. They cast forward, not finished things, but ways of thinking. With their help, we see the bridge before the stone, the flight before the wing, the smile before the face. If you listen closely to these sheets, you hear the same word: verify. Verify the light before drawing the line. Verify the support before promising height. Verify the heart of the conception before calling people. Thus, a soft philosophy of labor takes shape, not to seek applause, to seek stability, not to confuse speed with clarity, not to surrender to effect what belongs to form. What remains at the end of the day? A few corrected lines, a couple of numbers that finally add up, and a quiet feeling that the thing no longer resists. We could speak of him louder, but loudness contradicts his way of working. He is closer to the voice that is heard at the table with the lamp, the one that does not demand attention because it is itself attentive. When the light goes out, the notebooks lie on the edge of the table. They're not hidden in a chest. They need air. Let the sheets rustle easily in the draft. Thoughts love the reminder of the world's movement. We step out into the courtyard. The city sleeps evenly. Dust settles on the cobblestones. A coolness yet drifts from the river. And in this coolness, it is easy to believe that tomorrow there will be another attempt. This is the strength of his legacy. It does not call for worship. It calls for work. It says, look carefully, think honestly, work softly, and then even a small thing will withstand time. We do not put a loud full stop. Let us leave a pause in which one can hear the thin layer of paint drying, the line on the drawing straightening, the ink soaking into the paper. Through this pause, the person is visible, not an idol or a myth, but the one who holds the pen steadily and knows the value of silence. This silence is enough to live long in memory, and a little more about what is rarely noticed. The notebooks contain many small tasks: a hinge, a spring, a lock. He respects the small detail as much as the grand conception. Without the small detail, the great will not work. He loves to check how a thing behaves in the hands, not in words, but on scales. If the model is heavy, he looks for where to remove a gram. If it is light, he looks for where to add a rib. Water teaches him patience. It cannot be ordered to serve. It can be persuaded by the shape of the bank. This is how bends are born that look natural. Air teaches him flexibility. It changes faster than water and demands a quick response. Therefore, the wing for him is not just a drawing, but a conversation with a gust. To yield here, to hold firm there. He does not like empty mysteries. If a mystery exists, it will be born on its own, from precision. To make something mysterious on purpose is boring to him. He is more interested when clarity becomes profound. In his drawings, he often places arrows. These are routes for the gaze. This is how he teaches himself and others to see the sequence of steps. Mistakes most often hide between the steps. He has his own rules of economy, to economize not on material, but on mistakes, to economize not on time, but on unnecessary gestures, to economize not on beauty, but on display. Sometimes he writes in the notebook, "Return later." This is not a refusal, but a promise to himself. Sometimes later indeed comes, and the solution turns out to be simple. It's just that last time there wasn't enough air. There are sheets with almost no words, only lines. And there are sheets where words are more important than lines. He does not impose a single language on form. He listens to the language it is ready to speak. If you ask what all this is for, the answer will be calm, for stability, so that a bridge holds a step, a painting holds a gaze, and a person holds their measure. That is why his legacy is like a quiet tool. It goes unnoticed until it is needed. But when a difficult moment arrives, it is convenient to use. And lastly, about incompleteness. It is easy to call it a failure, but incompleteness is an honest diagnosis of time. It leaves room for those who will come after. We close the book. The rustle of paper is like a sigh. Outside the window, it grows light, and this light is enough to begin again.